Hello and welcome back to another episode of Imposter Coding. I am the Imposter Coder, Gary. Real quick, this is not a tutorial and I'm not an actual developer. I'm just documenting my way through ROS. Today what I want to do is I want to work on building my first publisher node. So without wasting too much time, let's just get into it. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to bring up this documentation. You could go through and you could read it. I'll share the link in the description below. But the reason why I'm bringing this up is more or less because I want to just look at this image right here. So essentially, when I say publisher and subscriber, what I'm talking about is when you have two different nodes, one can send a signal to what they call a topic, which is essentially like a channel, and then that channel would hold. So when I say publisher and subscriber, essentially what I'm talking about is you can have two nodes and they can be connected through a topic, and more or less the publisher node would publish a message to the topic, and any node that is subscribed to that topic would be able to receive that message. Now if we scroll down here, you can actually see multiple publishers can all publish to one topic, and multiple nodes can also subscribe to the same topic. So there really is no like set limit. So I guess a good way to think of a good example to compare this topic to is think of it as like a radio station. Imagine if you're driving down the road and you hit a point where you're in between two different radio stations, and you could kind of pick up both stations at the same time. You get a little bit of this station and then you would get a little bit of this station, but essentially both stations are sending a signal to the same channel, and you could be one of these two subscriber nodes trying to listen to both of those stations. And jump to our VS Code and see what we can get done. So what we're looking at is our first workspace. We do have our first package right here, and we do have our first node. Before we get too far ahead of ourselves, since I have this already here and we know we have to do it, let's go ahead and add that dependency and have that save. Okay, now what I want to do before I get too far ahead of myself, again, what I would like to do, and I just want to do this so that way I have my template node saved. So I'm going to get back into Larry controller. Now I'm not going to make this node executable or anything just because it's just because it's going to be something that I'm going to copy and paste from in the future. Alright, so we don't need this open anymore. We'll be working in this one. Alright, cool. So again, there's only so much that we actually have to add to our file to make this work. So as we can see, we already wrote our interpreter. We already imported RCLPy, and we already imported Node. The next thing that we need to do is we want to... So we can see that since we added the dependency to our XML file, it did auto-populate into this. So we should have, yep, message auto-populate, and then we can from there import, and now string should be available, which it is. That's always a good sign that we're working in the right direction. Okay, so now if we look, the next thing that we want to do is we move right down and we want to go ahead and initiate a publisher. So this is going to be us essentially creating the channel that we are going to publish our message to. So if we know, it's just a convention that we are going to add the underscore at the end of publisher. You'll see that we do this a lot. Self.create, we should have it available to us. We are going to create a publisher. Now if we look, we could see that it's expecting a message type, which can be any message type, but we do want to have it be something that we import from somewhere. We can custom make our own messages, which we'll get into hopefully in the future. So let's go ahead and we're gonna actually just, we can see here, add our string. Okay, and then this is going to be our topic channel. So it doesn't have to be topic. It can be whatever you want it to be. It can be bananas, it can be sandwiches. I'm going to call it hardware status. Okay, that's what we're going to call it. So, and now we're going to actually, this is required. It needs a queue. So you can see that this is a required argument, so we do definitely want to add our queue. It says 10 in the documentation, so that's what we're going to go with. It seems like it would be a good number. I'm going to drop that down a little bit. Okay, so next thing that they did is they created more or less the callback timer. They did create a class attribute of just 0.5 that they passed into their timer. I might just skip that and just pass the value directly into the timer. Timer. We can see that it's expecting a float, so we'll say 1.0. Just it's looking for a callback function. So we could, let's go ahead and define a callback function real quick down here. We can go ahead and do that, so that way we don't have the errors anywhere. And now we can actually go ahead and call this in here. It'll already be defined, self.monitor, and there's our function. Okay, and now you know how, notice how they gave the class an attribute to kind of like monitor where they are in their iterations. We'll do something similar, a little bit different maybe. So maybe instead of doing self.I and just giving it a value of 0, maybe we'll give it like a self.status, and we'll just give it a number to work with, like maybe 200. So let's do a little pseudocoding real quick. Okay, so I was thinking about how I should handle this, and what I decided to do just to make it a little easier is I'm going to create another attribute and say self dot is plugged in, and I'm going to set this to be equal to false. So now what I'm going to do is okay, so that took a little more thinking than I had intended, but essentially I think this would work, and this is what we would want to do. You can see that I actually added another attribute up here called self is plugged, or yeah, self dot is plugged in, and I set it equal to false. So I guess you could think of it as if this was a self, like your vacuum cleaner that vacuums the floor automatically. It docks itself to the plugging, or docks itself to the charging station automatically when it knows that it's to a certain point of battery depletion, I guess you could say. So more or less, like we could say we're creating a function that'll monitor the battery and handle that. Okay, so going back to our documentation, first thing that we need to do is create the object that's going to store the message. So we'll go ahead and say MSG just like they did, and we'll spell it like they did, and that's going to be string, and then this is already defined for us, so we don't need to make it up ourselves, but it's going to be message.data. And what are we going to want to share? Battery. Nothing, doesn't have to be anything fancy. Alright, so the next thing that we're going to want to do is we're going to call our publisher that we defined up here, and then we're going to actually pass this message to the publisher. So essentially it'll be then putting it to the topic, and we'll be able to subscribe to it later. Okay, so the way we do that is by calling the publisher and just simply Oop, nope, nope. We gotta call the publish function method, the publish method, and then pass in our message. Okay, so now it is going to, at this point, just keep publishing status is false and 200 because we're not changing anything. So now this is where we're going to come down and start making our alterations. Okay, so first thing we're going to do is check to see. Okay, so that got a little sloppy, so I'm going to definitely edit it and just speed through it until the end. More or less, I'll explain what I'm doing now. What we've got going on is if our status is greater than 50 and it's not plugged in, we're going to deplete the battery life by 10 points. And then we'll log using the battery. Else, if the battery is less than 200 and it is plugged in, we'll log the battery is charging and the status will go up 10 points. Outside of that, regardless which of these two actions is fired, if the status gets below or is equal to 50, we'll alter our plug-in status to true. And then on the flip side, if it gets to be greater than or equal to 200, we'll do the opposite. So that would represent the robot plugging itself in and the robot unplugging itself. It should work. We can go ahead and get rid of our pseudocoding notes. Okay. So we should be okay to run. Because we did add this dependency to our package XML, we are going to have to probably do the colcon build. So we just make sure you are in your workspace when you do this. So we should be colcon build packages. Although we only have one package, we'll go ahead and do this anyway. Package select. And we will do our, now that it's been built once before, it will auto-populate with tab. And that should be all we have to do. Fingers crossed, no errors. Build was successful, completed. Okay, cool. So we'll go ahead and source. Just to play it safe. And let's see what happens. Fingers crossed. ROS2 run Larry controller. What did we? Monitor node. Okay, so it is using the battery. The only downside that I didn't do is I should have it's not showing us the battery status. It did change, so it is working. I'm not sure why it's not logging battery status on our new line. Let's go ahead and see if we can't fix that real quick. Oops. So we can see Control C, not Control X, kills our node. I'm not sure really why that is not giving us our status. Let's just go ahead and remove it and hit the space bar. Oh, you know why we're not getting this? It's because this is what we're, this is what we're pushing to the topic and not what we're actually logging here. We're only logging this. This you won't see until we build our subscriber node and subscribe to it. That's what the subscriber node will actually, that's when you'll see that log. What we can do, though, for the sake of argument, is in both of these lines, let's turn them both into F strings. And at the end of battery, let's go ahead and add in self dot status. All right, so now we should be able to see. Let's go ahead and just rebuild the package. Test this out right now. I'll test it out with you guys. We'll go ahead and source our bash and try running it. We are now officially getting it, so it'll be using the battery till it hits 50. Once it hits 50, it'll start charging until it hits 200. Once it hits 200, it starts using the battery again. And that's basically it. So we'll destroy our terminal or destroy our node, and that would be all we did today. Okay, so once again, thank you for tuning in. If you like this video, or if this video helped you in any way, or maybe even if it helped motivate you to take on some new challenges of your own, go ahead and smash that like button. If you want to follow me on my progress through ROS and all my other journeys of learning, you can go ahead and subscribe, so that way you'll be kept up to date with every time I post a new video. Till next time, stay happy, stay coding.